I do want to talk a little more, though, about this Trayvon Martin case and just ask you all to consider how much it shaped the culture and fabric of our life since the time of this. This just tore the nation apart. For example, you know, the case had, the incident happened in Florida in February of 2012. There was a major march in Washington, D.C. called the Million Hoodie March. Trayvon's parents were there, other activists were there, demanding justice for Trayvon. And many people, in fact, I think in the clip we played, had Andrew Gillum and other left-wing activists tried to spread the story that Trayvon was killed because he was wearing a hoodie, that this was just, you know, racist discrimination against Trayvon because he was wearing a hoodie. We also had the New York Times invent a new category of ethnicity, which was a white Hispanic, instead of, because they wanted so much for this scenario to be, you know, white man kills black man, or white armed man kills young black man unarmed. But the story didn't fit because Zimmerman is Hispanic. And so they made up a new category, a white Hispanic, just to push the racial narrative. The willingness of the left to push this racial narrative, to never give credence to the reality that Zimmerman had to shot Trayvon Martin in self-defense. This went, as you saw in the little, just the short clip, the teaser of the film, America suffered greatly in an ongoing way because of the schism, the tear in our fabric, caused by not just this incident, but all of the left-wing activists arguing about and talking about and bemoaning it and claiming it to be representative of the horribly, deeply divisive, racially divided country we live in. And this effort the American left uses over and over and over and over to divide America by race. They use stories like this. They manipulate stories like this, use stories like this to make the argument that, you see, look what happened. Trayvon Martin, this was terrible. Innocent young kid, young black man, 16 years old, I think he was, you know, was just walking down the street and ends up dead. Never giving credence to the facts. In fact, doing everything they can, the American left doing everything they can to feed the narrative that America is a deeply horrible racist place that must be, you must be part of you choose your tribe and you must hate the other tribe and you must recognize how much hatred is out there. This was an ongoing effort, even up until this year, and will probably still be ongoing. But we had this year, there was in February this year, was it 7-year anniversary of Trayvon Martin's tragic shooting. All these presidential candidates there, Kamala Harris and others, lamenting and bemoaning that, and they were, I want to be clear, I'm very sorry the whole thing happened. I'm very sorry Trayvon Martin lost his life that night. I'm very sorry George Zimmerman got out of his car that night. But George Zimmerman had the right to defend himself, and that is what led to the shooting. And this is what you can't get the left to admit, because the left benefits from the racist narrative, from the narrative that says America is a deeply horrible racist place. Look what happened. Young man being killed for no reason at all, no justification at all. And then we got to the Michael Brown case, which we've been through several times on this show. And if you don't know this story in very summary form, Michael Brown was killed, was unarmed, and was killed by a white police officer. Backing up from that, the narrative the left spun over and over and over and over was this whole narrative of the young black man, Michael Brown, putting his hands up, stopping and saying, "Don't shoot," when the eyewitness who testified last at the grand jury, looking into that case in Ferguson, Missouri, a black woman sitting in the front seat of a car watching the whole thing, who didn't want to testify, who said, I never want to cooperate with the police. I don't like the police. I only came to the grand jury because I was subpoenaed. She said Michael Brown never put his hands up. He never stopped charging the officer. He was charging the officer whom he had already punched earlier in the day, same officer. And she said to the grand jury, that officer had no choice. Words to that effect. Michael Brown was going to kill him. And so, again, I get at this idea that the Michael Brown narrative, repeated and repeated and repeated in this country, is used by the race baiters of the American left, the race baiters who want to continue to plant seeds of suspicion, doubt, and division between among the American people, between black Americans and white Americans. It is an evil mission and is very intentional. It's very intentional on the part of the American left to try to breed division and resentment and distrust between the races in America. The left sees this as a source of their power. It's why they do it. They do it because they believe they can convince enough people who are perhaps vulnerable, who have not perhaps had all of life's blessings, who have had maybe a few bad experiences in life, and the left uses those to plant the seed in the minds of vulnerable people that they live in a country that is deeply, horribly racist, and therefore we had the, and therefore look at these incidents they can point to, Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. I am not saying, folks, obviously there are shootings that police officers have engaged in that were not justified, and we all jump and we investigate, and if there is evidence or if there's a finding of wrongdoing by the police officer, we prosecute. I'm not saying all police officers do everything right. And I'm not saying there's no racism in this country. I'm saying the left, even on the part of police officers, on the part of people of all races and backgrounds, racism exists in the world. I am saying that the effort of the American left to paint America as a deeply racist country, rife and filled and overflowing with hatred, is a lie perpetuated by the American left to keep society divided and resentful and distrustful. It is a political manipulation for political power. And you think of all the incidents that flowed after that, the hands up, don't shoot. We had, T-shirts. We had one of the NFL teams went out on the playing fields yelling out, hands up, don't shoot. We had the Million Hoodie March. We have all of these instances in which the actual event did not justify how the left characterized it, that they said it was evidence of racism. We have these instances in this country, and they are milked and manipulated by the racial manipulators in this country. And that is, if I have to say, the theme of the show today is out the idea of we, the American people, have to stop being manipulated. We have to call out the manipulators, call out their game. The truth is, when you have false accusations of racism, which the left does over and over, when real racist things happen, they actually lose their punch in the news, they lose their appeal. People go, oh, yeah, another claim of racism. I'll tell you examples of what happened because of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. We had the Ferguson effect. We had police officers unwilling to engage and protect community members because they're so afraid of being accused of wrongdoing. We had the Jussie Smollett hoax, completely cooked up lie by Jussie Smollett, a black actor, in fact, a black gay actor who in Chicago concocted his own assault, made a false accusation of assault having happened in a neighborhood in Chicago in the middle of the night, and claimed that the people who were assaulting him were using grotesque language, defamatory language about his race and his sexual orientation. Completely cooked up. Completely, he made it up to continue to perpetuate this America's a terribly horrible racist place. This was an effort by Jussie Smollett, which in some way magnified, continued the left-wing agenda to divide America along lines of race and to grotesquely exaggerate the problem of racism in this country. We're not a perfect country, but we are a great country, and most people don't engage in anything like what the left tries to claim happens. In fact, there was another case over the weekend. There was a former NFL player who owns a restaurant in Atlanta, Georgia, and he engaged in graffiti, messing up and roughing up his own restaurant facility, and then trying to claim, turning and calling and racist stuff painted on the walls, and calling the Atlanta police to say, hey, someone's in there. And the thing is, he didn't time it that well because the police caught him before he was even leaving the parking lot of his own restaurant and found all the equipment inside, like the paint that had been used inside his restaurant to paint the racist smears. But these things happen for, what I don't know what this man's reasons were. I mean, obviously, you're a little bit messed up if you can do that to yourself, but it is a constant effort of the American left to grotesquely exaggerate the amount of racism in this country, to divide this country for their own political gain. for their ability to hold on with a stranglehold onto the black vote. And as a matter of fact, the story I'm turning to next, the same tactic is used by the leftists in getting and trying to hold on to the women's vote.